Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is November 27th. On this day in 1978, San Francisco was rocked by a shocking act of violence that would leave a permanent mark on both the city and on the nation. Just before noon, former city supervisor Dan White walked into City Hall with a loaded revolver. Within minutes, he had shot and killed Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk. The double assassination didn't just take the lives of two prominent public servants. It shifted the political future of San Francisco, ignited mass protests, and sparked a controversial court case that left the country debating justice, mental health, and privilege. Today, we're talking about the Moscone Milk assassinations, a case that gave rise to the widely misunderstood Twinkie defense and left a legacy that's still felt every November 27th. Let's get started. In the weeks leading up to the shootings, Dan White had resigned his position as supervisor for District 8 in San Francisco, citing low pay and mounting pressure. But he quickly changed his mind and began lobbying Mayor Moscone to reappoint him. According to court records, White believed that the mayor had initially agreed to reinstate him, but ultimately backed off after hearing objections from several people, including Supervisor Harvey Milk. On the morning of November 27, 1978, Moscone was sent to announce a replacement, Don Horanzi, a federal housing official. White learned of the mayor's decision the night before. The next morning, he armed himself with a .38 caliber revolver. Rather than enter through the building's front door where he would have been stopped by a metal detector, White snuck in through a basement window. According to both contemporaneous reporting and police records, White made his way directly to the mayor's office. It was around 10:40 a.m. Moscone had just wrapped up another meeting when White arrived, and the two men moved into a small adjoining room to speak privately. Witnesses in the outer office heard raised voices, followed by what sounded like a string of muffled pops. Moments later, Moscone's deputy entered the office and found the mayor on the floor. He had been shot 4 times, twice in the chest and twice more in the head at close range. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the fatal shots had been fired from just a foot away when Moscone was already down. White didn't flee. Instead, he reloaded his weapon from cartridges he was carrying in his pocket. Then he walked down the hall toward the supervisor's offices on the other end of City Hall. Just before 11 a.m., White arrived at the West Wing and asked to speak with Harvey Milk. The two entered White's former office. 15 seconds later, gunshots rang out. Milk was shot 5 times, 3 times in the torso and twice in the head. Like Moscone, he had been executed at close range while on the ground. Word of the killing spread quickly. Dianne Feinstein, who was then president of the Board of Supervisors, stepped forward to make the public announcement. Her voice cracked as she confirmed that both the mayor and Supervisor Milk were dead. It was a defining moment in San Francisco history. By evening, thousands of residents had gathered for a candlelight vigil. Mourners marched from the Castro to City Hall carrying candles in tribute. The crowd was peaceful, but the city was rattled to its core. Meanwhile, Dan White had fled City Hall and called his wife, asking her to meet him at St. Mary's Cathedral. From there, he surrendered at the Northern Police Station, where he had previously served as an officer. In a taped confession taken that afternoon, White admitted to both killings. He described feeling cornered, betrayed, and emotionally overwhelmed. But he never denied pulling the trigger. Prosecutors charged Dan White with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in April 1979, and from the outset, emotions ran high. White's defense didn't deny the killings, but argued that he had been suffering from diminished capacity due to depression. One psychiatrist testified that White's mental state had sharply declined, saying that his behavior had become erratic. According to them, White had taken a break from his usual health-conscious lifestyle and increased his consumption of junk food. It was this offhand reference to sugary snacks, including Twinkies, that the media would latch onto, distorting the actual argument into what became known as the Twinkie defense. In actuality, Twinkies were never blamed for the murders. But the truly shocking part of the trial was the verdict. On May 21st, 1979, the jury returned a verdict that stunned the city. Guilty of voluntary manslaughter, not murder. The ruling meant that White would face a maximum sentence of just over 7 years. With time off for good behavior, he would be eligible for parole in 5. That night, as news of the verdict spread, San Franciscans poured into the streets in protest. By nightfall, the scene outside of City Hall had turned violent. Protesters smashed windows and set police cars on fire, destroying at least a dozen patrol cars. By the end of the night, over 180 people were injured, 59 police officers and 124 civilians. More than 24 arrests were made. The violence wasn't limited to the Civic Center. Hours later, police retaliated in the Castro district. At the Elephant Walk bar, officers in riot gear smashed windows and attacked patrons, escalating the toll of the violence. In the aftermath, damage to City Hall and surrounding property was estimated at $250,000. In the wake of the public outrage, California lawmakers moved quickly to reform the legal system. The diminished capacity defense, which had been central to White's case, was eliminated and replaced by a stricter standard that remains in effect today. Mental illness could still be considered, but it would no longer be a blanket shield from accountability. Dan White was released from prison in 1984 after serving just over 5 years. The following year, he died by suicide. Harvey Milk, one of the first openly gay elected officials in American history, had long understood the risks that came with visibility. Before his death, he recorded a message in case he was killed. In it, he said, quote, "If a bullet should enter my brain, let that bullet destroy every closet door," end quote. That recording is preserved by the GLBT Historical Society and stands as one of the most powerful documents of the era. In the aftermath of the murders, Dianne Feinstein was appointed mayor, becoming the first woman to lead San Francisco. She would go on to become one of the most influential political figures in the country. Now, every year on November 27th, the city pauses to remember Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk, not just as victims, but as symbols of progress. Their deaths sparked mourning, but their legacies continue to shape the city they served. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found today's episode compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!